States' rights and the federal government. All right, so the Constitution also addresses the relationships between states, how they had to treat each other and their decisions. So that's called interstate relationships. So like, for instance, Florida and Georgia, or New York and California. So we have two main clauses that discuss this. The first is the full faith and credit clause. This one's pretty simple. It basically just states that each state must honor the legal decisions of other states. So, if the state of Florida decided that you are worthy of having a driver's license, that means you're allowed to drive in the state of Georgia, North Carolina, Kentucky, wherever else you want to drive. You can drive there legally because they are honoring the legal decisions of that state. If you're found guilty of a crime, if you're a felon in the state of Florida, you're a felon in the state of Georgia. The most controversial one these days, as you see, example would be marriage licenses. If you are married in one state, like so you go and get married in Vegas and Nevada, you come back to Florida, you are married. Obviously, some states have gay marriage and some states don't allow that, so they don't honor that. So a lot of people who are in favor of gay marriage would point to the full faith and credit clause, and they would say that denying gay marriage violates the full faith and credit clause. You also have the Privileges and Immunities Clause, which is very simple. It says that states can't discriminate against other citizens or against citizens from other states. It's not much more to it than that. Additionally, you have extradition. The word extradite, it means to send a criminal back, somebody that's suspected of committing a crime or somebody who's been convicted and escaped, a convicted criminal, whatever the case is. So somebody commits a murder in Florida and they run away and they're hiding out in Nebraska. If the cops in Nebraska find that person, they will send them back to Florida so that they can be put on trial. So that's extradition. Now, lastly, we just have a couple things left. States' rights. All right, so there are still people today who believe very strongly in states' rights, believe that the federal government is too powerful, and there's a couple different ideas that they have. One of those main ideas, this is going back to the past, especially Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson era. You might remember this from American history. You have nullification. The idea of nullification. So you need to know what nullification is, first of all. And it's the idea that states have the right to void or nullify, meaning ignore, federal laws that they don't like. So if they don't like something the federal government says, so they don't like Obamacare or something like that, they don't have to do it. However, they are not right about this because of the Supremacy Clause. It says that the federal government is supreme to state laws when there's a conflict. So even though Thomas Jefferson and other supporters of states' rights believe in nullification, it does not have any legal basis. So it does not exist today. You have a Supreme Court case, Barron versus Baltimore. Don't really worry about knowing the name of that one too much. The idea is more important here. The idea is that the Bill of Rights does not apply to state governments. So what that means is that according to this Supreme Court case, states are allowed to restrict your freedoms and rights that were found in the Bill of Rights. This case is going to be overruled. Later in our course, in Unit 5, we're going to talk about something that takes precedent over this, but you do need to know that once upon a time, from 1833, Barron versus Baltimore, that the Bill of Rights originally did not apply to state governments. It does today, but you need to know that originally the Bill of Rights did not apply to state governments. One victory for states' rights is the Supreme Court case U.S. versus Lopez in 1995. The basic story is Congress tried to make a law banning guns in schools, and they claimed that the reason they could make this law was because it affected interstate commerce. The Supreme Court actually struck that law down. They used judicial review, and they struck that law down. It is the first modern limit of congressional power being limited by using the Commerce Clause. Probably don't need to know that one so much by name, but the basic idea is that it did limit their use of the Commerce Clause. Remember, this is the exception to the rule. As the rule, the Commerce Clause has been interpreted very broadly and let Congress do lots of things. This is one of the very few times in history it didn't allow them to do that. You also have the idea of devolution. That's a picture of Ronald Reagan right there, president in the 1980s. This is a more conservative states' rights idea again. The idea is that power should be given back to the states. So letting the federal government get out of the way, let the states take care of certain issues, that's something that Reagan is closely associated with. And finally, the last slide of this entire unit is basically something summing it up. Since the ratification of the Constitution, the overall trend has been that the federal government has gained more power at the expense of the states. So in other words, as you've seen, as the Constitution was originally written, the states had lots and lots and lots of rights and powers. The federal government did not have very many. Today, it's pretty much the opposite. Federal power has continuously grown. States have gotten weaker and weaker, and that's a trend that we see right down to this day.